knows where life will take us? I don't really know, but I got a feeling the best is yet to show. And I kept all the memories stored up in my.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Nelly, but most people know me as the Corporate Housewife. If you found me on YouTube, please do me a favor and go onto TikTok. It's Corporate Housewife ZA, and that's where I post daily vlogs. This channel is dedicated to all things lifestyle, marriage, and positive vibes. It's the consistency for me. Anyways, so this week I'm not doing a vlog, guys. I am doing rather like a sit and chat, because I feel like I've been seeing a lot of these videos online, aka TikTok, about like how we managed to get through our wedding debt free, how we save for our wedding, and I've never really like touched on my wedding. So I mean, especially like, yeah, even on TikTok, I haven't really touched on my wedding, and I feel like I do have some nuggets to share. When I did, funny story, like when I did say to my husband like, oh, I think I should do a video on how we did our wedding on a budget, he was like, babes, do you even know the definition of a budget? We did not do it on a budget. And that was mostly because of me. Like, I was a very high maintenance bride. I wanted what I wanted, but I feel like I wanted everything that I wanted, all within reason, and also because my husband and I were paying for our wedding for the most part. We knew that most of the bulk of the financial obligation was going to come from us. So I went into it with the mindset of like, well, if I'm gonna have to pay for it, then I better be able to get whatever I want. And that might be toxic, but facts are facts. Even though it wasn't on a budget per se, we did like get through it without going into any debt. And also, I think what's important to know is that, like, so 2021, my husband paid lobola in March 2021. Then we waited a year just to give us like a buffer to like save, because then 2022 is when we're gonna have like all our wedding ceremonies. My husband and I are Zulu for the most part. And so like I'm Zulu, and so we had to have umembeso first, which is a wedding on its own, to be honest. And then so we did that the following year, March 2022, and then in December, we had our white wedding on the Friday, and then on the Saturday, we had our traditional wedding. So we literally had all three ceremonies in 1 year. And yeah, so obviously we had to go into this with a lot of planning and just like, you know, making sure that we are staying on top of like all our finances, and we've set realistic expectations for ourselves. So I do feel like I can contribute to this conversation. And yeah, I feel like weddings don't always need to be on a budget. Like, if you can do it, because you know it's your day, and this day is probably only gonna come once. So yeah, let's get into some of the tips that I have for you guys in terms of how we got through our wedding debt-free. I have 6 points, but there might be more that I've jotted down that I think will be helpful to any brides. And also just like as girls, I think, you know what, like lean in, come closer. As girls, you need to be thinking about this before you even get married. I was planning my wedding for like probably after the first year that my husband and I started dating. Like, I was already planning this wedding. I knew basically what I wanted, the vibes. Yes, trends change, but I knew exactly what type of wedding I did want and exactly what type of wedding I did not want. So I think number one, and this is where it honestly starts, is having honest conversations and managing expectations with your partner. You must not forget that you're entering into an agreement. The wedding is 1 or 2 days or however many ceremonies you're gonna do, but you're entering into a marriage with this person, and you can't you shouldn't, let me say, you shouldn't let this one day or these few days slash ceremonies like put a damper on like the rest of your marriage, and you don't want to enter into it already fighting. Yes, you're gonna have disagreements about things, about money, about parents, about guests, about suppliers, all of that stuff, but like do not let like the planning of the wedding like become so toxic that you start thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times like, should I actually be marrying this person? And vice versa. Don't let the person you're getting married to also start thinking about like, does this person like actually have sense, you know? I think like with us, what we did is that I would say like after we already entered like into dating. It was one of the first few deep conversations that my husband and I had, was that like we both sat down and we were like, we are dating, like the relationship we're getting into now, we are dating because we're dating for marriage. So that was always the end goal, and it was set from the beginning. It's just I guess it's one of those like, if you know, you know. And honestly, I feel like when you start dating like 26 and upwards, maybe like 27 to be honest, like 27 and upwards, or okay, let's say 25. You need to start thinking like really carefully about like the person you're choosing, and like if you want to get married, like have that conversation. Be like, do you see yourself getting married anytime soon? It doesn't even have to be like marry me, but like, is marriage on your mind? You know, otherwise, because if it's on your mind and it's not on their mind, that means you guys are not on the same page, and this is not going to go anywhere, to be honest. Or it's going to be a fight, and then you're going to feel like you've invested so much energy and like you are almost forcing someone to get on board with your plan. Whereas like, just have an honest conversation and be like, is marriage where we're going? Okay, fine. And if it's a yes, like you can ask. I feel like you're adults at that point. I asked my husband like, at what age? I won't say like, when do you want to get married? Like I was like, at what age do you see yourself getting married? My husband at that time was 26. I was 25, so we're a year apart. And he was like, at 30. I was like, goddamn. That felt for me like such a long time. I think because it was a thing of like, I'm tired of dating. Like, I just want to find the one and settle down. These streets are ghetto. So yeah, we had those types of conversations from the beginning of our marriage, and of dating. So we're on the same page already that we wanted to get married. And then literally after my husband turned 30, this guy was like, okay, no, at 29 actually. Yeah, at 29, he was like, oh, okay, I'm thinking of like, I want to go pay lobola, you know. And I was like, thank the Pope. It's honestly such a nice feeling when a guy is like, I want to send a letter, I want my uncles to meet your uncles. It's such an amazing feeling, and don't let anyone make you feel like marriage is overrated. I don't think marriage is overrated. I think it's such a beautiful thing when it's done right, and each to their own. So that's about planning and being on the same page so that you're aligned, to minimize like conflict in the planning stage. And then number 2 is also like, then after lobola, we sat down, like even like the cost of ilobola, I think we need to also cover that, because we are brown people. We know Wutsi, marriage is not just put on a white dress or go to home affairs, you know. So there was also that conversation that, obviously I didn't want to get too involved in it, because at the end of the day, that's a conversation that my uncles and his uncles should have. But I did go to my mom and I said, realistically, just to gauge where the girl's head was at, so I could be like, okay, Bafo, try save this much before you go home, so that, you know, you're prepared somewhat for like what you're about to expect. Like, just have your partner's back, I think, to be honest. Don't be like you're trying to milk the person dry. Like, they must also see Wutsi now, like you're the type of person, Wutsi, you have your head screwed on right, and you're thinking about the long term, and not just like, we're just gonna get married and then we'll see from there. So yeah, like managing expectations. And then also there was another point I wanted to say on this, like, this one is very important in terms of managing expectations, is like, what type of wedding do we want to have? Now that's the conversation we're having here. And like, what can I bring? What can you bring? Are our parents paying? Are they contributing? You know, you need to have like that conversation of like, okay, Sharp, you want to go pay lobola, and then after lobola, when do you think like realistically we can go pay, we can go have our wedding, you know, or our weddings, depending on how many ceremonies you have to do in your culture. So having all those conversations and keeping them open, like sometimes you need to have a conversation like 3 or 4 times before you reach a point of agreement. And also like, this is going to lead me to my next point, but like also setting financial expectations. So like being real about your finances. I'll give you guys a personal story on this one. Before my husband and I got married, when we were dating, I was earning not that much, I'll be honest. I'd been working in corporate for just over a year, and like I was actually being severely underpaid. That's a story for another day of how I fought that and all of that. And so I was really like fighting for what I'm worth at work. And then my husband like sat me down and was like, realistically, because the bulk of like the finances for our wedding is going to come from us, you need to like find a way to make more money. Otherwise we cannot have the type of wedding you're thinking about. We're probably just gonna have to go sign at the courthouse and maybe just have a traditional wedding. And I was like, I really want a white wedding. So I was like, you know what, the type of wedding I want needs me to, you know, think about my finances and make a plan. And one thing about a woman, she will always make a plan. So basically how like I worked around that was that I just got like a different job. I moved jobs and I got a significant pay increase. So now like finances were, you know, more or less like easier to navigate, because yeah, we could basically afford more than what we could before. And I didn't take it personally, to be honest, and I don't think you should, because these are also conversations that you're going to have in your marriage. So I could understand where he was coming from, and I couldn't debate it because it was the truth of the matter, and that was what we could afford. And then on that same point of being real about your finances are also going to determine a lot about how your wedding is going to be. So like you need to know if it's good, like how long you think realistically. Don't be like, oh, maybe I'll find a job, you know, down the road, or like, oh, maybe bonus are really well next year, you know. You never, those things are sort of like not up to you. So try to work with the things that are in your control, you know. If you have a side business, then you need to look at your books and be like, okay, I know Uguti, month on month I'm getting this much, so okay, this is how much realistically I can afford to save. And that's another point that's really, really important, is saving, guys. I can't stress this enough. In my corporate job, I used to get like bonuses. Let me tell you, like, I've never spent a bonus in my life because I was saving for my wedding. Like, it's any bonus 32 days. There's no two ways about it. And you can't, like, you know, you'd be like, oh, I want to buy, you know, us girls want to buy hair, want to buy stuff for our house, or like, you know, you want to go on a trip and all of that. Like, honestly, we cut ourselves off so much that we could have done, but we were like, we're working towards the wedding, and that's where financially our goal is right now, and we want to come out of it debt free. And my husband was so determined about that, because obviously he's the better spender than I am. He was like, we are getting out of this debt free. And I was like, cool, so how are we gonna do that? And we sat down, we drew up budgets. Excel is your friend, guys. Yo, Excel, I can't stress this enough. And even on Excel, if you go onto Sheets, not Excel, Sheets, Google Sheets, there's literally like a wedding, a template for like a wedding budget, and we used something like that. I mean, I ended up using my own, but if you're not comfortable with using Excel, then like you can just go on Sheets and you can download that one. It's absolutely free. That helped a lot in terms of like seeing having all your line items out, and then once you've gotten your quotes and everything, some things will be estimates until you can until you're able to get like actual figures and quotes, and it's usually sometimes closer to the date. But just working with loose figures and seeing that number at the bottom, and you're like, okay, that's our goal, like it helps so much to keep you on track. I mean, sometimes it would give me anxiety. I couldn't sleep because I'm like, how am I gonna reach that number? But you know what, I'm a praying girl, and it happened. Okay, and then moving on to the third one. This one is quite tough, I will not lie. Setting boundaries with your parents, both you and your partner. It's very, very hard. Parents, siblings, anyone who you foresee that is going to want to play a role in your wedding. And something about us Black people and in African culture, umuntu meshada, like awushadiwe akushada imndeni. And it's very true, but then we also must be realistic about this, because it's not like the old days where we can invite the whole world to our weddings, because guys, the cost of things is just insane, and that's just not financially feasible. So sitting your parents down and being like, listen, this is how much we got. Unless you're trying to contribute, there's absolutely no way we can do X, Y, and Z. Or there may be some things that we can combine and not have to do in different ceremonies. And also like with I don't know in other cultures if you do this, but in the Zulu culture, umembeso and umabo, there's the exchanging of gifts from each family. Guys, the list ya membeso na yo mabo, yo, the list was so like sitting down, like my mom wrote the list for my husband. I was like, okay, let's look at this list together before we send it to them. Who are all these people? And like anyone who is family, who has not supported you most recently or played a significant role in my life or your life, I honestly don't think, excuse me, yes, it's nice if you can, like literally everyone, but there's no way. Also, I come from Istembu. My mom was married into Istembu, although my parents divorced. My dad is now late. So customarily, my husband's family, everyone, you know, and all my dad's wives and all his kids, of which he did do, but then he just didn't do like grandparents of, like, for example, my half siblings' grandparents, because absolutely not. That's where I drew a harsh line. And then also like on the aunties and the uncles side, like no. There's also like this thing of like if they were not immediate family who had passed, we were not doing it. I'm sorry, hate me, but it's my money and I know what I'm working towards, and that's being debt free after my wedding and making sure that I'm gonna eat after my wedding and during my wedding. So there's absolutely no way. And then also setting boundaries. This one is very, very tough. Setting boundaries in terms of guests. This one, I feel like my husband and I set really well, was that, okay, we're gonna have umembeso, which is open to everyone can attend. It's basically like, you know, that one was like my house, at my grandparents' house, and it was like umphakathi can attend. I had to have 2 tents, one for you know, the people coming down from Joburg, my in-laws and my friends, and then I had another one for umphakathi, because my mom and my uncle sat me down with, and they were like, listen, realistically, I understand, like the budget is tight, it doesn't have to be a full decored out tent, but just accommodates umphakathi, just the bare minimum, which was just like not a bougie tent. I had like 1 bougie tent, you know, the typical decor and all of that for like my in-laws and my friends and all of that. And then like for umphakathi, we had just like a basic tent and those black chairs, which I think we ended up hiring for like 2.5 for all of that. It was like 50 chairs. So like there are things like that where you're going to have to give into, but if it's for your peace, for peace sake, do it. If it costs you your peace, don't do it. As I was saying, members was at my house, so it was like mostly my family. Some people also traveled from Joburg, like friends, and also obviously my husband's family and some of his extended family. And I also feel like, you know, when you have things quite far, it also cuts down numbers because not everyone will be able to make it. And then we had the white wedding. The white wedding we were very strict on, because the white wedding was where we spent the bulk of our money. Obviously, because you know how white weddings are, from venues to catering to your dress, your hair, photographer, DJ, like all of that is so expensive when it comes to a white wedding. Excuse me. So we were very strict. We straight up just lied. We were like, no, sorry guys, the venue only accommodates 120 people. Our venue accommodated 200 people. But we're like, there's no way. Per person, catering was 790 Rand per person. So there was absolutely no way. We ended up sending 110 invitations, and we had 70 people at our white wedding. It was very small. It was about us, because also we wanted our white wedding to be about us. Remember, so, and the traditional wedding was not about us. There's so many things happening to you and around you and between the two families. You just like, I honestly feel like you should have one day that should really be about you guys. And also that's why we went to go sign 2 months before we did our white wedding. So we were actually married 2 months, like officially married 2 months before that. And that we just went with our parents. They were our witnesses. And that was it. And that day also felt like about us. We didn't broadcast it like before we went. We didn't tell a lot of people, just like close friends. And even that, it wasn't telling them as like we're extending an invite. It was just like, oh, an FYI, we're going to sign next week, you know. So definitely set those boundaries and don't let anyone, I'll honestly say, as a bride, I don't know how grooms feel about this, but don't let anyone take this day away from you, because yo guys, the amount of money you spend on this day, on these days and ceremonies, it better be about you. And then moving on to the fourth point, don't give in to social media / Instagram expectations. I feel like that one, like, just like, you know, it sums it up. Because you see a lot of content online. You see a lot of content and you're just like, wow, that's so beautiful. And then like I did this thing of like, I would see something, I'd look for the vendor if it's in the caption, or look for someone who can do it, get the quote, and then I'd get humbled real quick about whether I can afford that or not. And most often than not, I could not afford it. I remember I also wanted like a vintage Bentley, no, Rolls Royce. And guys, for my white wedding, and let me tell you how pointless it was, because our white wedding, everything happened on one property, and literally from my bridal suite to where I walked down the aisle, it was like a 5-second drive. But I was like, for photos, for content, oh, it would be so beautiful. My husband was like, I think not. So yeah, like don't, like, it's nice to have some things. You should understand what is a nice to have and what is a need, and if all your needs are taken care of, then, and you're still under budget and there's still room, like then you can start looking at the nice to haves, you know. And also leave yourself some breathing room, because you do find that you're gonna start burning through money when you start paying for things and moving around. Especially like I had to go home for my members, so like a week before, to basically manage everything on the ground and all of that. And there's a lot of money when you do stuff like that. There's a lot of like small transactions that happen that like actually do add up. So also leave yourself like a good buffer for those types of things is really important. So like one thing I think is really nice and that we had for our members, or our white wedding and our traditional wedding is we had like drone footage, and that was very nice. But that was because like we actually, like, our photographer didn't charge us that much, and they didn't like charge that much for drone footage. And I think that will lead me to my next point, which is like try avoid wedding exclusive suppliers. That means if someone like only makes wedding cakes, absolutely not. The markup that people add as soon as you put wedding is insane. So what we did to save money around there is that we used photographers that weren't wedding exclusive photographers. It was still pricey, but it wasn't as insane as some of these other quotes that we got were, so that then we could be like, oh, okay, do you also do like drone footage? And excuse me, and they'd be like, yeah, they could. And the price we got for like drone footage was like so cheap, but it looks so nice, and it really adds that like extra thing to like your wedding footage and stuff. My cake as well, our cake, so what we did was that our venue, part of the menu came with a dessert bar, and there were 6 desserts. So we're like, there is absolutely no way that we're going to do 6 desserts and then have like a 3-tier wedding cake, because who's gonna eat that cake? So what we did was that we just had a single tier cake. I think it like fed like maybe 10 to 15 people. It was very simple, but I chose a very nice design so that there was a cake, so that we could cut a cake, but no one touched that cake. And no one even thought about the cake because there was so much dessert. So like, be smart about things like that as well. And then I use like the same baker. She's like literally down the road from me. She's my friend's cousin, and she's just affordable all around. Birthdays, baby showers, whatever, I'm always volunteering to bring the cake, because I'm like, I have a plug. I paid 1.2 for my cake, guys, just putting it out there. And she decorated it so nice, incorporated the flowers that we also used on like for the rest of the decor. DJs as well, stay away from people who are like, we're wedding DJs, stay away from those people. And also like I think like MCs are also like a big trend, and I get it, I do get it. But guys, some of you have like friends who are really good public speakers, or relatives who are really good public speakers, and if you just give someone direction and they know how to work a crowd, that's your MC. Maybe you can just buy them a bottle of what they drink, or just say thank you, to be honest. Sometimes people are just glad to just do things for you and to be part of your special day in some way or another, versus like, you know, you having to pay them. Okay, and then on to my 6th point is choose your venue smartly. This one is really important. And what I mean by choose your venue smartly, do you guys know that when you book a wedding venue, most wedding venues, it's just you've booked the empty space, whether it's a hall or whatever. And some venues, even though they have all those things on one property, it's a separate cost for the chapel and where you'll have your reception, and even sometimes where you can take your photos. And then also think about that. Choose a venue where you can, is also nice enough so that you can have your photos taken at the venue, versus like having to move around, because also keeping people waiting while you guys take photos, it does like you know, you want your guests to not feel like you've forgotten about them, you know, and go off for like 2 hours and go take photos. And it does create like a damper in the spirit of the excuse me, of the what's this, of like the day, you know, because people are like, yo, we're so tired of waiting for the bride and groom, when is the next part gonna start? So yeah, with venues, like, ask a lot of questions. You want to ask, what do I get with this venue? And also like, is the venue gonna be exclusively just for us to use on the day, or are you guys like people who, you know, host like 4 events on the property on one day? Because also you don't want to have like a kiddies party over here when you're saying I do over here. Like, think about that. Or like having like just a different function. You don't know how other people behave, and then you trying to have like a nice beautiful wedding over here. So what we did is that we chose a venue which was it was pricey, I won't lie. The venue is one of the things that we did spend a lot of money for, and that was because I really liked the venue. It was my dream venue. It was so beautiful, and yeah, I just really liked it. And then the perks of it, when we compared it with other venues that were maybe cheaper for the venue cost, they actually offered a lot of things with the venues. Most venues, you still have to hire chairs, tables, spoons, forks, knives, plates, everything you see on the table. And the crazy part about that is that you actually most of the time hiring it from the venue, so it doesn't come with the venue. Or they can say you can use your own suppliers. So ours like came with a lot of things included. I remember like their bridal package was like, the wedding package was like 6 pages long, and it detailed everything they gave you versus everything that you would have to pay for that's an extra. And so when we did the costs and we weighed the pros and the cons of having an expensive venue, but then they do provide a lot of things like versus the having a cheaper venue, but then we still have to hire out and look for those suppliers, and that's where we're going to start burning through a lot of cash. And so what our venue provided was chairs, tables, cutlery, crockery, the cake stand, like everything except flowers, candles, and any other extras like signage that you wanted. But even like they provided the flower arc, and you just had like, it was up to you how you wanted it styled, and obviously you pay for that, like the flowers on it or whatever decor you wanted on it. I'm not even going to speak about how much we spent on decor for the white wedding and the traditional wedding, because yeah, I just wanted it to look nice. As Dorinda says, I made it nice. So think of that with venues. Also guys, unfortunately we do live in a country where there is racial bias and racial discrimination, and I did experience it at my venue, just with like one person, but with my on the day coordinator that I actually dealt with, she was a very nice, and I had most of my meetings with her, and she was very like so nice. I didn't feel any type of way. She checked on me the entire day from when I got there, even the communication leading up to. I had a great experience with her. But some people are going to limit like what you can do on their properties versus and what you can't do. And also like we had something like, there was a noise limit that the DJ could go up to, and our DJ was like, I've never heard of this before. And they couldn't have like bass speakers, like that was a no-no. They also wanted a DJ who was like Samro and Sampra registered. It was a whole lot. You also have to pay for your what are these people, your suppliers on the day if they're going to be eating or there for the meal times. So you also need to think about that as well when you choose a venue. Like, do they want you to pay for those things? And if you know that like you want a wedding where it's gonna be going down, then you need to ask those questions up front. They're really important, and not find out after, especially you've paid your deposits. And also just another thing with venues is like, how long do you have to like settle everything before the day? Because sometimes some people could want the deposit or the full payment way earlier than maybe that you'll actually have it. We were very lucky. You just had to pay the deposit to secure the date, which we did. And the deposit was like 50%. No, it wasn't even 50%. But it was like a set price, but it wasn't like 50% of like everything that we settled. I think the booking fee was like 15,000 or something. So we paid that up front, and then the rest of it, I think they told us like 2 weeks out from your wedding, like everything needs to be finalized and paid for. and that was fine. And then there was also like one other thing you think about is the security deposit as well. We also had to pay a security deposit where they take any like breaking, like, you know, glasses breaking or anything that breaks, they're gonna take it from that. And we actually got most of it back. I think we only broke like 3 glasses and I broke one of them. Okay, last 2 points. Actually, yeah, last 2 points. Number 6, if you can't afford it, don't do it. High key on that one. If you can't afford it, don't do it. For example, like wedding traditions that require more money, you know, don't do it. There's a lot of traditions that we did not do, but they didn't cost money. Like we didn't throw the garter, therefore I didn't need to buy a garter. We didn't do a bouquet toss, but I did have a bouquet. What else didn't we do? I mean, like my mom walked me down the aisle. Traditionally it's the father. I don't have a father anymore. But like, and they didn't take away anything from our wedding, to be honest, and I don't regret it at all. We kept speeches very short. Time is money, because also the venue is going to tell you like you have this much time on the venue to use the venue, and they do start, like our venue was like, if you run over time, you'll have to pay for every hour. And then also we had accommodation at our wedding venue, at our white wedding venue, and guests could book it, and we were like, absolutely not. We didn't even tell them about it, because then they were like, if the guests don't check out by 9 a.m. they're gonna charge you. So we're like, we're not even gonna risk that. People are gonna get drunk, you don't know. We weren't sleeping at the venue, so we didn't, you know, want to have to be stressing. We're moving on to day 2 of our wedding the next day, so we're like, no, it's fine. We did end up having to pay the minimum, because they require like a minimum amount of rooms to be booked. I think it's like 3 or 4 rooms, so we paid for 4 empty rooms. We didn't even use them, but for the sake of peace, and that saved us more money than like if we would have to pay for people who overstayed and all of that, and now worrying about what are those people gonna have for breakfast the next day, etc. Also, another thing that we didn't do and we still haven't done, we didn't go on honeymoon. Why? We couldn't afford it. We didn't go like balls to the wall with our wedding, but we did, you know, we had a really nice wedding and we saved for it, we planned for it, we had the wedding that we could afford, and we made sure to get the most out of it. So there was no money to go on honeymoon. There's still no money to go on honeymoon. And do I wish I'd gone on a honeymoon? No. My husband and I travel often, and we've traveled even while we were dating, so it wasn't such a big deal for us to go on a honeymoon, to be honest. If you're thinking if you should do it and you know that you're not gonna have the money, don't do it. There's other things that you can also do with that money. Also, there's been so many times that like we've had honeymoon money but we use it for something else, and that leads me to my last point. Point number 8, or was it number 7? I forgot, guys. Last point though, please think about the future. Because nizoshada, kube mnandi, kudliwe, kuphuzwe, what about tomorrow? Do not spend all your money. I was so happy with it. My wedding came and I still had money in the bank the next day, because you hear so many stories of people being like, we spent so much money on our wedding. Literally when I was walking down the aisle, or the next day when I opened my bank account, I had 0 in my account. Don't do that. Don't do that. You need to live, you need to survive before your wedding, during your wedding, and after your wedding. And one of the things for us was that we knew that we wanted to buy a house after our wedding. So that's also like another reason why we didn't go on honeymoon. It's like we can either pay for a deposit on a house, or we can go on a honeymoon. The house. The honeymoon we can always go on. The house like was more important for us. And also like what we also did was like where we stayed before we got married, because we knew that we were always gonna get married, and we were going to buy a house after we got married. That's why it's important to have very open conversations about what are your plans, not just for the wedding, but like post the wedding. Like, what is your 5-year plan? What is your 2-year plan? What is your 1-year plan? You know, we always knew that we wanted to buy a house after the wedding, and so we lived in places that were affordable before the wedding, and we didn't invest into those places. Like, you guys have seen like my TikTok videos from the beginning, what the places we stayed at looked like, and what my interior like looked like. We didn't invest. I didn't do like a complete overhaul of like decor and all of that. And again, if you can do it, but then honestly, if you know, like, we always knew that this is temporary, it's not the long term, so, and it's not permanent, we didn't like invest in that. It's only like now that we've bought a house and we know we're gonna stay here a couple of years, is now when we're actually investing into the space that is ours. And excuse me, not even just like if you're going to buy a house, but think of other things that need to be done after the wedding. For example, like if you have to pay for family to travel to and from your wedding, those people need to get back. Those people need to be fed throughout the wedding. I had that. I also had to pay for my mom's dress. I had to buy my uncle's suits. I also bought my cousin clothes, just because I don't come from a family with money, but I wanted these people to be part of my wedding. And also just think of like how you want life to be once you get back. You don't want it to be like Uguti, the first point of contention when you after your wedding, like ningena ngokuxabana into your marriage, if I can put it like that. Uguti, when you're like, oh baby, can we do this, can I have money for this, and then your partner's like, ungakhohlwa ukuthi all those things you were asking for the wedding, that's where our money went. Because I also think like men, and I say this with my husband a lot, like my husband will literally do anything for me, like anything. I just have to ask nicely, tilt the face like this and be like, babe, you know. And men will always want to make their woman happy. It's just in their DNA. My camera overheated, guys. But yeah, I was saying that like men will always want to make you happy, and honestly, your partner, if they like truly want the best for you and the best for both of you, they will try by all means to give you, you know, the world basically. So just, you know, be realistic about, you know, what life is gonna look like after the wedding, and honestly, don't expect and demand too much. Everything within reason, I think, is like always my motto. Like, don't be like, I want unicorns at my wedding. Like, so it's like my unicorns after. So yeah, I think that's like everything I could think of and everything that I wrote down. If you guys want a part 2 of this and want me to share more insights of things that I probably missed, please do let me know in the comments. I'm very happy to share that. I hope that this video has been informative for someone, and that, you know, those who are either 2024 or 2025 brides, or, you know, if you're just thinking about marriage long term or in the short term, or would see this video was helpful for you. As usual, guys, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. And one thing I want to say is that, guys, marriage is a beautiful thing. It is such a beautiful thing, and don't let the material things of the world get in between two people, and don't let other people get in between into yabantu yababili. So I'm gonna leave you guys with that. As usual, I've had so much fun hanging out with you guys. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.